This episode is proudly supported by Powerhouse Parramatta.
Powerhouse Parramatta will open in 2025. The new museum will be the largest in New South Wales and is determined to offer the very best in hospitality. Perhaps your business can be part of defining a food and beverage offering which is expected to cater to 2 million visitors a year. This incredible opportunity for operators includes retail food and beverage, in-house residential catering, events and other hospitality ventures, encapsulating the diversity of cuisines and cultures that make Western Sydney so exciting. Interested to learn more? Powerhouse invites food and beverage operators to a briefing on Tuesday, 8th of August. For more information and to register for this exclusive briefing, go to powerhouse.com.au.
I love the community aspect of pubs. I love seeing the same groups of people coming by. I love building the business. That's what I really like doing, is seeing it from a shell where no one was coming here, and now I've got the locals on side, they're starting to come in.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. British food used to cop flack, but for anyone who has travelled to the old Dart, they'll know a lot has changed. Australia's commercial kitchens are rife with chefs who have travelled down under to work and make it their home, especially from the UK. Neil Thompson is the owner of A Little Kitchen and the Annandale Hotel. Neil, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
You've got two very different food service offerings. So what's it like trying to juggle both of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty full on. The cafe, the Little Kitchen in Coogee, is quite well established now. I mean, we've been going for nearly 9 years. So I've got an excellent team. So I've been able to step away from there and just concentrate all my energy on the hotel. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Give us a picture of what it's like in the hotel at the moment. They're sort of impacted quite heavily with COVID, but everything seems to have opened up again. What's the energy and what's it like working in a big pub like the Annandale now?
Yeah, it's really good, actually. We're just starting to, I feel like we're just starting to find normality over the past few weeks. People are really interested on going out and eating again. I don't see that many issues in terms of COVID anymore. I think people are just sick to death of it. So, it's sort of bygone. I don't really see much of it anymore. I mean, the hotel's busy. Because it's been closed for 2 years, it's going to take me a while to get it going again, and we've totally changed the business model. But I mean, we're certainly, the trajectory is now upwards, so yeah.
Well, tell us about that business model. What have you changed in order for it to really thrive at this time? Yeah,
so we took the lease in February 2021. The building was in a terrible state. It was awful. It had been closed for nearly 2 years. It was dilapidated. The cellar was just horrendous. The upstairs was just, there was just an inch of dust and dirt everywhere. So the Annandale was known as a live music venue, and the suburb itself had sort of gentrified over the years, and I think the old business model had not kept up with maybe the gentrification of the suburb. So it just had slowly over time died off. And obviously, the way Sydney has gone with live music, unfortunately, it's become harder and harder to run that type of business. With noise complaints, developments. There's a huge development that's been put on the back, literally slap bang on the back of the pub. And, they were having huge issues. With noise complaints and those sorts of things. So, a friend of mine had approached me about the pub. He'd been approached to take over the lease, and he's already got quite a lot of hotels, and he was just too busy. So he called me and said, look, come over here and have a look. And to be honest, I was pretty skeptical, because it's sort of ingrained in the building as being a live music venue. But, after a few months of thinking about it, it's a fantastic space. We agreed to do it. Me and my wife agreed to do it. And we signed the lease. We took over in February, and we spent 7 months with the builders in here trying to get it open. Yeah. So it was a shell. Like, we had to start from scratch. I mean, me and a friend of mine spent nearly 8 weeks in the basement, waterproofing, grinding. So yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate in that I have a whole group of close friends that are sort of in the trades, and one of my best friends sort of helped me to take it over, and he's done all the building. He's done all the building side of things. He's sort of project managed it and built it, and he's a really skilled joiner. So he's he's got decades of experience in Sydney in the building game. So I couldn't have done it without him, to be honest, because we had so many dramas. We couldn't get timber. We had, at one point, I had the tiler. He couldn't even go home because his suburb had been locked down. So we had to buy some clothes for him and put him in one of the rooms upstairs so he could just stay here and work, because he was halfway through the bathrooms. It's like, I can't go home. If I go home, I'm locked down and I can't come back again. So it's been interesting, that's for sure. A steep learning curve.
Well, as you mentioned, it is renowned as a music venue in Sydney, but give us a picture of what it's like now to go to the Annandale. Yeah,
so we're trying to re-engage with the community. I think there was a deep divide. There's sort of the older crowd that used to come in here, and as a live music venue, they'd sort of grown up and had kids and moved away, and sort of there wasn't that many of them around anymore. And then there was a sort of another group of people that didn't want anything to do with this place because they felt like, it just wasn't a good place to come to bring your kids or your wife. So what we've tried to do here is re-establish a connection with the community. So, we've got the schools involved, local sports teams. We're trying to, obviously being a chef, we're trying to, do a really decent food offering. So it's a food and drink venue now. We've got a classic sort of inner west Sydney kind of pub bar with sports and all that kind of jazz. And then as you move through the pub, we've got more of a sort of family and dining area and a nice outdoor courtyard. So we're sort of trying to make an offering for everyone.
Take us to the cafe, a very different offering to what you're doing at the Annandale, which you mentioned you've had for 9 years now. Tell us a bit about that and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so, we wanted to, because I live in Coogee, I really wanted to do some sort of breakfast offering for the locals. There wasn't at that time. There's a few places that have popped up now, but at that time there was barely. I mean, it was a sort of they used to say a culinary wasteland. So we thought we'd have a crack at it. We found a nice little spot. It was just up the road from the beach. We know a lot of people in the area. That obviously, I think Coogee has the highest percentage of Brits in Australia. So I thought, right, we'll try and play on that, and I'll open a cafe and start making black pudding and baked beans and all these sorts of things. And we opened, and it took a while. It took me a good 2 years to get that place up and running. But I just wanted to open a cafe where everything's directed by the kitchen. So we make all our own sausages and baked beans, and we use some really good suppliers, and so that place has just turned into a monster. I mean, it just pumps. It's really, really busy. We've got a great team in there. I've got great management. The last 6 months I haven't been there, but literally all I did for 7 years was cook bacon and eggs every day. I was there every day, day in, day out. I like box after box of poached eggs. I wanted to get into the pub game, but I had to stay. We had twins, so I went from 1 kid to 3 kids, and I just thought this is a really bad idea to start thinking about other businesses. I just need to hunker down here, help my wife, be a dad, because we had 3 screaming kids running around the house, and I just didn't want to be the guy that's just never there. So that as they've grown up a bit, it's been a bit easier for me to start new business ideas and start thinking about other things. But yeah, I had to delay. I had to put my career on hold for about 3 or 4 years, just to try and help be a dad, because we don't have any family here. They're all overseas, so it's just sort of me and my wife.
Tell us about the offering that you created at the Little Kitchen. You mentioned that it was a take on British food. Did that alter with the market being in Australia and the ingredients that you had access to?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not big on like authenticity. Like, I just think that's nonsense. Like, you can't replicate, and I didn't want to try to do that anyway, but you can't make something like a British cafe because nothing's the same. So in terms of the food, I didn't want to go like full British. You can't go full British. It's not going to work. So I had to sort of splice food for the Brits and for the British appetite in for that Australian climate, So yeah, the food at the Little Kitchen, we had to change up what we were going to do in terms of the food. I couldn't go full British. I had to lighten up the menu. We have to deal with a lot of the eastern suburbs types that are very health conscious. You have to balance that in with what I wanted to do. So yeah, I think we've struck a really good balance between, and also over the years, the more time I've spent here as well, like my cooking has become a lot lighter in its approach. So I think we've managed to get that sort of balance between, I even actually had to change the black pudding. It was just we were doing almost 100% pig's blood and oats, and it was just too much. Like, they were just a bit turned off by it. So I had to line it up and make it more into a sausage. So those sorts of things. But you can't go past avo on toast and those types of dishes. That's going to pay your bills. But the amount of people that come there for the British food, it's gone up and up and up and up. So we're known for that now.
Well, take us back to the UK when you were young, and what sort of role did food play in your family? Yeah,
so I think for me and my sister, I've got an older sister growing up. My mum died when we were quite young. I was only 9 and my sister would have been 12. So my dad, God bless him, he had to do his best and try and cook for us, and it was pretty bad. So when I hear these sort of stories about, people with sort of Italian grandparents and sort of European, and they used to make all these beautiful sauces and pastas, and that is the opposite of my upbringing. My dad cannot cook at all. He's an engineer, and he did his best, but I think my cooking came from necessity. I think I was talking to him about this the other day. The food was so bad. I think me and my sister just made a conscious effort to learn how to cook. We can't carry on with this, we're going to get poisoned or we're going to die, So we just started cooking, me and my sister. And as we got older, my dad would be away quite a lot. He was working overseas quite often. So, we just started learning how to cook. And then when I was 14, 15, I got a job in a local pub. And I just started washing up, and I just loved it. I took to it like a duck to water, And then from there, I never looked back. From the age of 15, I've been in kitchens in one form or another. So yeah.
Do you have any stories of the kitchens that you worked at in the UK and what sort of impact they had on you?
Yeah. So the first place I worked at was a gorgeous pub called the Windmill, which is a village it's a place called Ewhurst. It's a village in Surrey, sort of halfway between London and Brighton, gorgeous on top of a hill. Eric Clapton's actually the next door neighbour. He still lives there. He bought his house there in the late 60s, and he's never left. So it's an absolutely stunning pub, and it was a real sort of country. It was a real sort of country affair. We'd have farmers dropping off pheasants, and I'd have to sit out the back and pluck pheasants, peel potatoes. And in the summer, I would actually move up there. I would actually go, and it was about a 10-minute drive from my home. So I'd shuttle up there in the car, and I'd stay upstairs, and I'd just, for 4 or 5 weeks, I'd help him like change barrels, wash up, make sandwiches, you know, and I absolutely loved it. So that was my introduction to cooking into restaurants and pubs. And then I did a cookery course, and I moved to London when I was 18. I moved to London, just turned 19, I think. And then I worked in London for about 6 years in different restaurants. For Terence Conran, I worked for Conran Restaurants. I worked for a really good, I was very lucky. I had an amazing head chef, Peter Whedon, and he was my first real sort of head chef. That was in probably 2003, 2004, and he was a real trailblazer, because even in those days, it still was very French leaning in the UK, and he was very adamant that we weren't going to do anything French. So he'd taken over. Conran had got the lease on this building right next to the Royal Stock Exchange, next to St Paul's Cathedral, right in the middle of London. And he wanted to open a traditional chop house. So I went and did the opening with him, and it was amazing. It was some of the best years of like learning of my life. You know, we were buying direct from the fishermen. They would go out on the day boats off the coast of like Cornwall and Devon. The fishermen would call my boss up and be like, "Oh, we've caught this turbot. We've got these lemon soles. What do you want?" And he'd just be like, "Yeah, bring them up." And they'd be there like, they'd go out in the early morning catch, and they'd be in London in the evening. Like, you'd have flounders still flapping, you know. We were dealing directly with the farmers, you know, like buying traditional breeds of meat. We would have farmers rocking up at like 11 o'clock at night with cows in the van, like, and we'd have to start pulling like quarters of cow up the stairs, and we had our own butcher. You know, if the watercress arrived and it was French, he'd send it back. So I don't want it. Like, British only produce. You know, it was remarkable. Like, the more I think back of it, like the more I didn't realise at the time, but like what he was doing then is now become sort of a common. Like, he would put a beast of the day on the menu. So he would say he'd have some middle white pork, for example. He would say, right, this is the beast of the day, this is the cut, this is how we're serving it. And he would put the kill tag in at the front of their restaurant when you walked in. So you could see, like, the authenticity of what he was doing. Like, he'd take us on the week, like, we were shut on Sundays. So quite often we'd go to the farms and, like, meet the farmers. And, yeah, it was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And then from there, I went and worked for the Galvin brothers at Bistro Deluxe, which is a 1 Michelin star French bistro. They were both Marco Pierre White head chefs over the years. So they come from that kind of background. So it was a massive change for me. It was very sort of precise, very French, very, really full on, lots of hours. But that, again, those guys, the Galvin, they're phenomenal, those two. And that was a real, another learning experience for me as well. And then I moved here, and I worked at the Tilbury when I first moved here in Woolloomooloo. And I met my sort of business mentor, Gerard Dorr. He ran the pub group. And he sponsored me within 2 weeks of landing. We just got on really well. I got my sponsorship with him. And he's a great, great guy. I mean, he's been a friend to me for 12, 13 years since I've been here. And he's helped me so much in the pub game. I wouldn't be here without him. Like, he's sort of guided me along the way. He's always there for advice. He's got quite a few pubs of his own now. So he's doing really well. And he understands the pub game. Why? Because my wife's visa run out in London. She's a Queenslander, and so I was only supposed to be here for 6 months, you know, and I think a lot of English people say that, and that sort of 13 years later, I'm still here. But yeah, that's why I came. I had a good job. Like, I was working for Soho House. I was doing all right. Like, I was just like, I'll just see how this goes. quit my job. My wife had already left because she was going travelling around Thailand. I quit my job, came over here, and I was like, oh, I'll just see how it goes. And I just sort of went from there, really. So, yeah.
Tell us about your experience landing in Australia. What did you think of the restaurant scene compared to what you had known in the UK?
Yeah, so I actually started off in Brisbane. I flew into Brisbane. I remember it was -5 when I left Heathrow. It was like the 7th of January, and it was an extraordinary cold winter, even for England. And then I flew into Brisbane, and I remember it was 35 or something, like, and humidity, like, it nearly knocked me off my feet. I was like, this is insane. So my wife's from the Sunshine Coast, so we spent a bit of time there with her family. Then we actually went down to Brisbane. And we're like, right, we'll try and get some work in Brisbane and see how that goes. And to be honest with you, I lasted 2 days in Brisbane. I was like, I don't like this place. Like, and that was a while ago. Like, it was such a change, like a shock for me. Like, it was so different. And I was like, it's too hot. Like, I remember wearing thongs in a bar, and they like kicked me out the bar because you had to wear shoes. You couldn't wear open sand. Like, I was like, this place is bizarre. Anyway, I phoned the only person I knew who I worked with, a chef in London, who's back over here now in Sydney at the time. I called him and I was like, have you got a job for me? He said, yeah, jump on a plane. So I flew down to Sydney, started working at the Tilbury, and I just loved it, you know. Like, I thought the food scene in Sydney at the time, like, this is like 2008, it was really, I felt like it was a lot more accessible. I felt like in London, like, it's just like this sprawling metropolis, and you had these glamorous, like, top level chefs, the 3-star chefs, the 2-star chefs, and you couldn't get near them. Like, you know, they were just like these sort of icons. And here it felt like everyone knew everyone. Everyone was really friendly. The food scene was buzzing. You know, there was obviously a lot more Asian influence at the time. Like, it just. Yeah, I don't know. It just felt a lot more accessible. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I felt.
You spent a bit of time working with Colin Fasnage as well. How did that come about? And do you have any stories of what it's like to work with Colin?
Yeah, so I finished up at the Tilbury, and I just wanted a change. And he was advertising at the Four in Hand, and I'd heard a few things about him, and I just phoned him. He had his mobile number in the app, and you know, he said, oh, come down, come do a trial. It was like a Friday night, and I went down there, and it was just, you know, I just got on with Colin straight away. Like, he has this reputation, and he was, in those days before he had kids, like, he was, you know, he was fiery. He was very fiery, but you know, I love working with him. I worked for him for years, you know. Me and him got on really well. Like, I never had that many problems with him. He was a real, he's like someone I really admire, you know. Like, he's done so well for himself. He again, at that time, like, he was doing stuff, he was using a lot of, you know, secondary cuts, pig's ears and pig's tails and, you know, livers and offal things. Like, I think we have a similar sort of food philosophy, you know. So I took to working with him really well. Yeah, we had some crazy nights down there. Like, it was pretty. Yeah, it was full on. Like, it was full on. But he, you know, that he was winning. We got 2 hats. He won the best pub food. Like, he was winning every award that was available at the time, you know. And he did that on his own. Like, he crafted a reputation for himself. Like, he got himself in trouble several times, but like, he's genuinely one of the funny, if not the funniest person I've ever met. Like, he's super down to earth. Yeah, he's a great guy. And you know what? When everything was kicking off with COVID, he was one of the first people to call me down at the cafe and say, "Is everything all right? Like, you know, are you going all right? Is there anything we can do?" Like, he's a good guy. Like, he genuinely cares, you know. And there's that kitchen that I worked in. There's the few of us, like Paul Farag. I worked with Paul. Paul was in the kitchen with us at the time. Like, he's gone on to open, like, he's just opened the new restaurant. I forget the name of it now. They've got Nor in Surrey Hills, and the new one he's opened in the city. Like, he's killing it. Like, he's doing so well. He's such a fantastic chef. And Carla, obviously, she's up in Coffs Harbour now. They've got places up there. There's a few of us that have gone off to do good things, I think. So it was a bit of a breeding ground,
Tell us about the time when you decided you were ready to open your own venue. Were there challenges in getting that, sort of finding a site and getting it started?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one thing to be good at leading a kitchen and having an organised prep list and, getting the prep done and having a good service and writing kitchen rosters. It's an entirely different thing to run your own business and have to deal with BAS statements and ASIC registrations and land tax and all these other things. So, I was working with Colin. My first kid was born. He was very young, and I just thought, you know what, I think my time here is done. I really want to go and open my own place. And, I've been speaking to Jared, my old boss from the Tilbury days, and he's always encouraged me, just do it, go and do it. So I just I think you just got to jump in head first and just smack your head through all the mistakes and just keep pushing through it until you sort of find your feet. And, that the process of it's a tricky process from being a head chef to running your own business. And, luckily my wife, who's, been with me every step of the way. I mean, she's got a really strong restaurant background as well. Like, the two of us do everything together. Like, she's opened the cafe with me. She was at Rockpool Bar and Grill, and she was like a supervisor there. She worked there for years. She'd left there, and she came to help me with the cafe. So she sort of runs all the front of house for the businesses, and she's phenomenal. I've never seen such a hard worker in my life. I mean, she is just pure graft. So, yeah, I mean, she's helped me with a lot of it. And she's a lot more sensible than me. Like, I go off on these mad tangents. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Oh, let's spend 10 grand on this. And she's like, we haven't got any money. You need to do this. You're not spending any more money. We need to do this. She's a lot more, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of a strange relationship in that sense. But she's a lot more grounded than I am. Like, she keeps me in check, that's for sure.
You've had a career that's been in a lot of different pubs in different circumstances. What do you love about running your own pub now and doing an offering of your own?
I love everything about it, to be honest with you. Like, I love the community aspect of pubs. I love seeing the same groups of people coming by. Like, I love building the business. That's what I really like doing, is seeing it from a shell where no one was coming here. And now I've got the locals on side. They're starting to come in. You see big groups of people coming, hanging out. Even at the cafe, I've seen kids grow up. I've seen people become friends because they've met at the shop. Like, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it gives you some sort of sense of fulfillment. You're not just grinding out day after day in a kitchen. You're actually seeing a business grow and working with and employing really good staff, and them coming along the journey with you. The learning process. I love working for myself. I don't think I could ever go back to having a boss. But there's so much I enjoy about it.
What makes a great gastropub?
So I think the gastropub thing, I think in Victoria and Melbourne, it's more of a thing, the gastropub. But in Sydney, I try not to do the gastropub thing. I think people feel alienated by it, and I think the more I've got into pubs here, the more I've the more I've learned in terms of it's not the same vibe. Here in Sydney, they want to order at the bar. Like I'm amazed by the level of work that customers are actually happy to do in a pub. Like they have no problem whatsoever grabbing their own cutlery, getting their own drinks, like ordering their own food. You know, that's the sort of vibe here. And also, like in my pub, we have, you know, groups of 20 come in. And it might be 5 different families, and they don't want table service. They want to come in, they want to be relaxed. That one family might order, the kids might want the food, another family might order, you know. So you might have 5 orders for one table. So the sort of the maybe it's not the right word, but the stuffiness of that table service is not necessarily. I feel like the pub culture in Sydney is different. It's not the same, you know. My head chef Hayden, that's working for me here at the pub, he'd come from the Harwood Arms in London. He worked for me in the cafe. He'd gone and done his pilgrimage to London. He worked at the Harwood Arms in London, which is the only Michelin-starred pub in London, and he spent about 18 months working there. So you see, so there, I think a lot of Sydney types would go there and think, well, this isn't actually a pub. This is a restaurant inside a pub. So I think Sydney siders, they want to come in, they want to be able to get loud in the bar and watch the sport, you know, the football, AFL. They want to be able to order a burger. I mean, it's a lot more relaxed, you know. So I think you need to cater to that, you know. You need to make sure that people aren't feeling alienated, like whoa, like this is too upmarket, this is too stuffy, you know. So. Yeah.
Well, Neil, congratulations on bringing the Annandale back to life. We've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.